Welcome back to Strange Serenity, the podcast. The deep dive, where we get into the nitty-gritty of all sorts of things in pop culture. And, today's subject is one that I'm not too thrilled about, honestly. We're talking about the Ren and Stimpy show.
Oh, yeah. The chihuahua and the cat with the powdered toast and the all the bizarre humor.
Bizarre was putting it lightly. Honestly, I'm not sure humor is even the right word for some of the stuff they got away with. I mean, even now, I still get nightmares about Ren. Those eyes and that laugh.
I can see that. The show is really something else. I mean, really pushed the envelope on what you could show in a kid's cartoon.
If you can even call it a kid's cartoon. And that's what we're looking into today, right, with this deep dive. The question of whether Ren and Stimpy was actually revolutionary or just completely revolting.
It's an interesting question because on the one hand, it was a big hit, and its influence is obvious, like in SpongeBob or Rick and Morty, so you'd think it would have had a bigger cultural impact.
It was a massive deal in the 90s. But the analysis we're looking at today suggests that maybe Ren and Stimpy was popular more for its shock value than because it was actually, good.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah, like tons of gross out humor and just plain weird stuff. But
Yeah.
did it actually say anything meaningful?
That's where the comparison to shows like The Simpsons or South Park is helpful. Those shows pushed boundaries too, but they also tackled social issues and made you think. Ren and Stimpy, on the other hand.
It's like it just existed in this bubble of pure absurdity.
Right. And that's one of the key points the analysis makes. It describes Ren and Stimpy as almost nihilistic, like a world without consequences or morals. So was that intentional or just because the show was so chaotic?
It's a good question, and that's where it gets really interesting. Like, if it was deliberate, was it making some kind of statement? Or was it just a product of the times? Yeah.
It's fascinating to think about because even if the show wasn't trying to be deep just by existing and breaking all the rules, it kind of was making a statement.
So are we saying Ren and Stimpy was more like performance art than a cartoon?
I think that's one way to look at it. Like maybe it was more about experimenting with animation than telling a story.
Yeah, and they definitely experimented on my childhood trauma. Like, do you remember that Happy Happy Joy Joy song? Super catchy, but the animation was just so creepy.
Yeah, that's for sure. The art style was a big part of what made the show so popular and controversial. The exaggerated features, the close-ups, all that weirdness. It was really unlike anything else at the time.
Like a fever dream version of classic cartoons. Didn't one of the people who made it actually work on Mighty Mouse before Ren and Stimpy?
You're thinking of John Kricfalusi, the creator. He did have a background in traditional animation, and you can kind of see that sometimes in Ren and Stimpy, like little bits of smooth animation and expressive characters. But then it goes off the rails into this grotesque, over-the-top style.
And that's what the analysis points to as both the show's strength and its weakness. Visually, it was innovative. But did those visuals actually have a deeper meaning, or were they just there for shock value?
That's the question, isn't it? Like if you compare it to SpongeBob, which was definitely influenced by Ren and Stimpy, it has the same weird humor and energy, but it also has heart. You care about the characters and the stories have meaning.
Whereas with Ren and Stimpy, it just felt like it was reveling in being strange. Like it was daring the audience to keep watching.
And for some people, that was the appeal. They loved that it was so different and didn't care if you were offended or didn't get it.
But did that hurt its long-term impact? The analysis seems to think so. It argues that by avoiding traditional storytelling and meaningful themes, Ren and Stimpy kind of became a dead end.
It's like they built this amazing, weird world, but then didn't know what to do with it.
Maybe that was the point, though. Like, life is absurd, so why not just embrace it and laugh at the chaos?
It's possible,
Hmm.
but I think what the analysis is getting at is that for art to really connect and last, it needs to do more than just shock or amuse. It has to connect with the audience on a deeper level, even if it's just through humor.
So where does that leave Ren and Stimpy in the big picture? Was it a brilliant but short-lived phenomenon, a cautionary tale about style over substance, or something else entirely? Welcome back to Strange Serenity. So we spent a good chunk of time talking about the Ren and Stimpy show, and honestly, I'm still on the fence. Like, is it actually good or just disturbing?
It's a show that people definitely have strong feelings about, and I think that's because it was so hard to define. Was it satire? Was it nihilistic? Or were they just trying to see how far they could push things?
The analysis we looked at sort of suggested that it was a little bit of all of those things.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what makes it so interesting even now,
Yeah.
that it refused to fit in a box.
Yeah, that's true. Even if it wasn't trying to be some big cultural phenomenon, it definitely changed the world of animation. I mean, shows like SpongeBob, Rick and Morty, Adventure Time, they all owe something to Ren and Stimpy.
You're right. They all have that visual style and that weird, grotesque humor. But those shows also went further, didn't they? Like, they actually had stories and characters you cared about, and even social commentary, which Ren and Stimpy just seemed to avoid.
For sure, and I think that's the main point here. Ren and Stimpy was groundbreaking, and it opened up new possibilities for animation. But maybe it didn't have a lasting cultural impact because it just stayed in that shock value zone.
Like, it was so good at being weird that it never needed to grow or change.
It's an interesting idea, isn't it? It makes you think about what it means for art to have a legacy. Does something need to be popular or have some big cultural meaning to be important?
Or can a show like Ren and Stimpy be important precisely because it didn't care about any of that? Because it just stuck to its own weird vision?
Maybe that's the biggest takeaway here. Sometimes the most powerful art is the art that breaks all the rules, even the rules about what it means to be culturally significant.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the Ren and Stimpy show. Listener, what about you? Did it leave a mark on you? Did you love it, hate it, or just feel really confused? Let us know. And until next time, keep exploring the strange and wonderful world of pop culture with strange serenity.